All this talk about pubs and stuff, and pubs closing down and being turned into flats for migrants and, officers and that type of thing. I've been watching it for years. We've got a small town and we had a fair few pubs. We had a lot of pubs. But every single one of them, bar 3, 4, have all gone and been turned into offices and, flats. And it's depressing. And I want to just share some moments, because obviously I don't care about views. This is my channel. I'm doing it for memories. It's really important to remember stuff. It's really important to remember stuff. So I'm going to talk about some stuff from pub days. So my mum, when she was 21, she worked in the local pub in the Nag's Head, and she did her time there, and she's got her stories. And then one of my family members actually took over that pub, and I was about 21 myself, 20, 21. And I thought it would be a really, really good experience to actually go and do the same job that my mum did, and work in the pub that my family owned, and work with my family, and have that experience. The pub's been around since Victorian times, since early 1800s. There's so many stories I could tell about this, and I'm only going to tell a few to start off with. And the first ones that I'm going to tell are to remember some of the people, some of the customers that came in. I can go into other stories down the line, and I've got some cracking stories. I've got some. If you ever went to the Nag's Head, you could not come out of there without a handful of stories. Like, things happened there. So, a pub, first off, is obviously short for a public house. And history of a pub, what is a public house? So, public houses, as it says, it's a house where the public go to and they can get refreshed, they can drink, they can eat, they can see their friends. Quite often they would be able to lodge as well. So when my mum used to work at the Nag's Head, there were rooms upstairs. I think there was between 8 or 13 rooms upstairs, where people could stay the night. When I worked there, it wasn't a place where people could stay anymore. There was somebody living up there, so they had all those rooms to themselves. Secretly thought that's such a bad idea. It's good to live above a pub because there's always something happening at the pub and you always need to be there. However, you also need a cut-off point and you need your own time away from a business, and that was extra revenue. It was extra revenue that could have been coming in for people. Everyone always gets, arse-faced, tits up, bladdered, and can't get home. And that would have been perfect to just have a room upstairs, where they could just kip the beer jacket off and then get up next day and have a breakfast and remember that they do actually have a proper home that they need to go to. That would have been handy. So I want to talk about a few people. So I worked there for 5 years. I worked under 2 different bosses. I'm not going to go into the bosses today, but I am going to go into some of the customers because it's really important that I remember people first. So a pub, again, is a place where you would go to socialise if you don't have friends or family. It's somewhere where you could go to keep warm if you can't afford electric at home. That's a reality. If you can't afford gas and electric, you would go and sit in a pub in a room full of people and have the company instead of being lonely and cold. That's what a pub was for. It's making me emotional because I know a few people that used it for that. First one I'm going to remember, John Maloney. I've already done an ode to John Maloney anyway. John Maloney was the life and soul of the party, and I've got a few videos up of him already. He's no longer with us. But he had... if it wasn't for me working at the pub, I wouldn't know any of these people. I wouldn't be able to remember him. You know? So, John passed away from prostate cancer, which was really sad. And it was at the time when my mum was dying of cancer. So it was really difficult. John used to buy me pizza. He would, if I was on a late shift and I was working on my own, he would come, bring me a pizza, tell me to eat, get himself a double rum and black, sit there and drink it. Even though he's been drinking all day, get another rum and black in, throw it up, and then ask for mop so he could clean it up, because he don't want me doing that. It's not fair on me. Then he would grab the hoover and start hoovering the pub while I ate. And he would keep me company. And then we would have a back and forth quite regular about who was walking who home. Bear in mind, John is a pensioner. And I'm in my 20s. And he would argue with me, and I would argue with him. And I would always, because he was drunk and I wasn't, I would always be able to steer him towards his own house and make him walk home first, and I would take him home. And he loved karaoke. I can't say he was any good at it, but he loved it. And he would joke, so good at jokes and stories. And if anyone wanted a fag, he would give them a fag. Like, it was like a bottomless pit for fags. Even if these people treated him so bad, he would just give it to them. He would just give them money, and he would just give them fags, and it would just... It was to a fault sometimes, you know? It was to a fault. And I would tell him, you need to stop. But he was just that guy. He was just a nice guy, you know? No amount of bad person was ever going to make him stop being nice. John was one of my favourite people. I never had a granddad or a dad, but if I had one, I would love for it to have been John. He very much liked Laurel and Hardy, and he had lots of figurines in his flat. And he used to sing it all the time. Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, all the time. And I would sing it with him, even though we couldn't sing. And he had birds. He loved cockatiels, so we got this shared thing for birds and Laurel and Hardy. And he got a cockatiel, and you can always tell which flat was his, because you could hear the cockatiel through the window and see all his Laurel and Hardy statues in the window. Yeah, John's one to remember. The next one is Sue. Sue was about 4 foot tall and extremely overweight. John, by the way, in the videos you'll see him, a little bit hunchback, tall, knobbliest knees you've ever seen. Always wore his whites for cricket. Always wore his whites. And you saw his knobbly knees more regular than not. And he didn't care. And he was always in his suit. It was either his cricket whites or his suit. You never seen him in, you know, loungewear or anything like that. He was always dressed very, very well. Sue, 4 foot. Very large. Very addicted to dopamine and chasing dopamine. And by which I mean food, drink, people, love. She was a very lonely person and she was absolutely desperate to be loved. She was extremely naive and she would admit that. She was naive. She was kind to a fault. She would let people take advantage of her if it meant that they would stick around. And that really upset me. Sue is another person. They'd be me, John and Sue, and we'd all walk each other home. And I would always make sure that John got home and that Sue got home. And when I got to Sue's, Sue was a hoarder. And I would have to just go around the house very quick and just make sure that there was a clear path and that she was safe. She got a little chihuahua. And that dog used to come to the pub and it was ever so lovely but very timid, not socialised too well. But when you went to the house, it was always ever so friendly and it wanted a good love. And it was dead excited to have mum back and have a visitor. Quite often I would have to clean up. She would knock things over and she would fall over a lot. Her health was absolutely awful. So I would pick glass up and just make sure that she got clear runs to where she needed to get to, and I make sure that she got water next to her, and that she got medications and that type of stuff before I left her for the night. She always wanted me to stay. She was so desperate, but I needed to go home because I know for a fact if I'd have stayed, she would never have let me back out. I'd have been stuck there forever. Sue loved to dance. Sue was an ultimate raver. She would throw shapes. The tables would, if a song came on, the tables would move. There would be a space and Sue would be raving. If there were wigs going round and we were doing fancy dress, she would whack on some fancy dress. She loved fancy dress. She loved dressing up. She loved doing her hair. And her favourite tipple was Strongbow. Couldn't get past her. And if there were a free shot going, she would be there. I don't know how she does it. She must smell it a mile off. You just bought yourself a shot, and the next minute she's looking over your shoulder. Is this shots? Is this shots going? There is for me, Sue. Why do you want one? Often she found herself in relationships that were piss poor, is the only way I can explain it. They would take advantage of her. She would have family members, her own brother, partners using her for her money, for her benefits, and she would be left with nothing. And I was so angry, and I'd say to her, "Why'd you keep doing? Why are you still letting this happen?" And it's because she didn't want to rock the boat. She didn't want people to shout at her or stop talking to her. She is one of the people that would come to the pub because she was lonely and she needed to be with people. And she would sit with me for the whole day and whole night. And we would eat and we would have a drink. And she got very poorly. And I gave her my number. And I said, keep checking in with me, please, just to make sure that you're safe. Keep checking in because I've not seen you for a while. Just keep checking in on me. And I'll keep checking in on you. And I remember she sent a message saying how grateful she was to have me as a friend. I want to explain she's pension age as well. She got no children. No, she got a son, but son was kind of in and out, not really totally there and not the most upstanding of people. She didn't really have anybody solid, you know. And then I got that message saying I was a good person to have in her life and she appreciated me. And then she came into the pub about a week later and she was grey. Her hair had just suddenly gone grey. And she was pale and clammy and sick. And she told me she was dying. But she wouldn't tell me what of. And I said she shouldn't have been in the pub. And she brought a dog. And I said, you shouldn't be here if you're poorly. And she said, she didn't want to be alone. And she was scared to die. And I told her, at least sit with us then, but don't be having a drink if you're poorly. And she said, I need one. And I said, I get that. So I sat with her. She only had a couple. And then she left. And then that were it. And nobody told me till a month later that she'd passed away. And she'd had a funeral. And no one had told me and I didn't get to go. I regret not going to see her more. She didn't have anybody solid and she really, really wanted me to be there. And I was going through my own stuff. And I couldn't be there all the time. And I feel bad about that. But I've got to be grateful because if it weren't for the pub, I'd have never met her. And it's funny because I grew up with her family. I never even knew who she was until I started working at the pub. John and Sue would always turn up just before the pub was due to close on line cleaning day. Because line cleaning day, we have to flush out the pipes. And that often means that there's some waste pipes that need getting rid of because it might have line cleaning fluid in it. They would stay in for a pub lock-in. None of this should have ever happened, obviously, but they would stay in for a pub lock-in past closing hour, and they would pay £1 per each of these pints that were potentially semi-okay. And they would have all of these pints. So I'm not just talking like 1 pint of Strongbow. I'm talking they would be cider, bitter, lager, ale, that all needed cleaning out, and they would decide which one they wanted, and they get about 4 pints for £4. And sit there, and then they'll go, yeah, it's all right. It's not going to kill me. Even though it's got a bit of fluid in it, they'll go, it's not going to kill me. Or they'll go, no, this one's too bad, can't drink this one. They both knew I loved my mama, and they both knew that things were happening with me, and they cared a lot about me. I wished I was able to show them where I'm at now. and for them to be in better positions. Those two are my ride or die people. There's a second layer of people that are just under that, and I'm going to make another video about that when I've stopped bawling my eyes out. Because I'm a soppy git. And I loved him. I'll make a video on some more people soon. I've got to put Roy in there. I've got to put John, Jeff, the Squire. We've got a few people to chuck in there that aren't here anymore. Some of them are. Some of them aren't. And then I'm going to talk on some of my experiences, me personally, whilst being there. And then I'm going to talk about the other things that happened in the pub that I'll never forget. Despite the pub being the most chaotic place I've ever worked, where some of the worst bad things happened, I can't even say it was that bad. There were people there that I really cared for, and I still do. And I can't say that that's the case since working in the pub. It was a place I went when I needed a break from my life and I needed to go somewhere warm. Even if I didn't want to drink, I could just go sit in there with an orange juice. I used to kip in the booths overnight if I didn't want to go home and sleep on one at booths. And go upstairs and stay with landlord on sofa. Even though the landlord are a fucking knobhead. And I'm not talking about me family member on this one, a different one. The best time of my life was in that pub. It was also the worst time of my life in that pub. I used to think I would never do it again because you don't get paid enough. It's not secure enough. And the hours are really grueling. They are. But I really enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the dressing up. Making sure everyone was safe and happy. The general chatter and catch up. People were always good to me. They were. And they would try to be on the best behaviour as well if I was on. They would. Not all of them, but, you know. I miss it. And then I miss the people. And I would like that back. I don't know if it can come back the same. I don't think things come back the same, do they? But I would like to see less pubs being shut and turned into other things. I would like them to stay pubs. That would be nice. So lonely people had somewhere to go. Or if they were cold, they could come in and get warm. Or if they've had a really fucking bad day at work and they just want to come in and have a quick party to pick themselves up. You know? Yeah. Little one on John and Sue. I'll do some more later when I've sorted myself out, because I'm a mess. The pub is integral. It's not about drinking and fighting and that kind of stuff. It's not that. It was never that for me. It was about drinking. It was. It's a pub. But it was a whole lot more than the beer. Yeah, first video done. I'm going to go sort myself.